Donald Trump, in one last Hail Mary to retain the presidency, has now officially, legally changed his name to Joe Biden. So, checkmate, I guess. Hello, and welcome back to whatever the hell it is that I'm doing this week. I appear to be in a blank void, so I guess I'll just be a knockoff John Oliver this time. Now, unlike John Oliver's void, this void doesn't seem to have come with a desk, and I refuse to wear a suit as a matter of principle, the principle being I'm poor. But I'll meet you in the middle. Something like that. Just the thing with the loop and the... No one will notice. Oh gosh, I cannot see anything. Perfect. But I'm feeling better than usual, you know? I'm finally at a solid 3 out of 10. Because at long last, some good news this year. The 2020 election had a record-breaking turnout, the largest in history, with over 156 million ballots cast. And some of them were even legal. All joking aside, thank you to everyone who voted. It's amazing. 156 million. That's a big number. I think. All I know is I can't count that high. Now, I'm sure by this point you've heard a lot of things from a lot of people about politics. It's becoming obnoxious because seemingly everyone is deluded into thinking that they're smarter than every other self-proclaimed political pundit. It's very annoying, especially for those of us who are. Look, this election, it's not about who won. It's about who lost. No, stop it. Stop that. Bad editor. I don't mean specifically, because you and I both know we didn't vote for anything. We voted against something else. You could have replaced both presidential candidates with decorative towels, and the only thing that would have changed is a surprising amount of decorum with two really confused vice presidential candidates. So, nothing would change for the VPs. But hey, first towel president in history. And truly, voting against people instead of for anything is not something I or anyone else is going to solve anytime soon. But it is a problem that's important to recognize. Because when the most important thing to you is crushing the opposition, then you'll sacrifice a lot of your values listening to demagogues to get rid of the enemy at all costs. It's like getting out of a frustrating conversation by peeing yourself. It'll work, but now you've solved one problem by creating other problems. And now these new problems are worse than the original problem. And now Stacey Cunningham isn't into you anymore, and the analogy breaks down if you think about it too much. Don't. And yes, Joe Biden is advocating for unity instead of division, but his actual job, at best, is to unify Congress. He cannot unify us or our fractured friend groups and families. That job can only be done by Keanu Reeves. That job can only be done by us. And I will put my credibility on the line here and say yes, at least on a social level, it is because of how we use social media. It's not because of liberal colleges, gerrymandering, corrupt politicians, the 1%, or any other thing that existed long before the 2000s. And maybe, to a much smaller degree, being old and racist at Thanksgiving. And technically, the way social media companies prey on human psychology kind of makes the 1% part of the problem. And corrupt politicians do make regulating these companies very difficult. And gerrymandering has resulted in Republican and Democratic voters becoming increasingly segregated from each other in a process that, like telling me you're on your way when you haven't even left your house, should obviously be illegal, but somehow isn't. No amount of traffic makes you 45 minutes late to dinner again, Jenny. You're not fooling anyone. Okay, yes, gerrymandering may be the biggest institutional problem facing our democracy. But socially, we can't just wait for the government to step in and depolarize the public. We can't expect fixes to any of our immediate interpersonal problems because to maintain a democracy of our size, the government must be intentionally designed to be an ocean liner, not a speedboat. We can vote and stay loud and run for office ourselves to steer the ship 2 degrees north or south so that in time we end up with real incremental progress. But we can't treat it like a speedboat and expect it to do sick wheelies and kickflips and other things that boats might do whenever we need it. I don't know, I don't like the ocean, and it's hard. It's really hard to see injustice, yet feel like every step toward progress is like waiting for Keanu Reeves to be single again. But I promise it's a good thing that radical change happens slowly, because it goes both ways. If it wasn't radically hard to make radical change, then we're just one demagogue away from losing not just all our progress, but our basic power to create change for good. Yes, it is incredibly important to make sure we hold our leaders accountable, but that's only part of the solution. Political leaders can help regulate businesses to improve the economy so that I don't have to keep dressing up as Dolly Parton on OnlyFans, but if we keep telling people we used to respect but whose views we now can't stomach to unfollow us and go fuck themselves, then our interpersonal relationships with, as we have found out this election, the other 50% of the country are still going to be like me dressing up as Dolly Parton on OnlyFans. Subpar. And the other 50% aren't just some country hicks. I mean, some are, obviously, bless their hearts. But they're also our parents and grandparents, our childhood friends. They're the kids we did group projects with in high school who never, ever pulled their weight, yet still grew up into adults whose votes matter just as much as ours. They're honestly pretty much anyone we met before leaving for college and then moving away from our hometowns, to a city with better job prospects that doesn't suck as much. And for every liberal post mocking Trump voters for suddenly wanting to put politics behind us now that their God won't be in charge anymore, there is a conservative post ripping into the left, saying, they called us racists, Nazis, deplorables, and now they want unity? Never. And truthfully, they kind of have a point. We did call them that. A lot. We're really good at it. Because if we're going to blame the right for every shitty thing that conservative extremists do, we have to take responsibility for every shitty thing that leftist extremists do. That's the entire problem with taking the actions of extremists and collectively blaming them on almost, US population, 50%, 160 million people. That's way too many people to generalize. I think. Again, I am guessing. I'm not sure what numbers do after 1,000. I have some hunches, but it'll take time. We can't just say 160 million people must be morally bankrupt and mentally damaged, then call it a day and pat ourselves on the back for being critical thinkers. We're better than that. We're not Republicans. Had you go in there for a second, didn't I? What sticks with me the most is a viral post that said, not all Trump supporters are racist, but all of them decided that racism isn't a deal breaker. Fun fact, did you know that West Virginia has 55 counties? California has 58 counties, despite having almost 6.5 times the land area and over 22 times the population. Fun fact, while 35 counties in California were Democratic this election, West Virginia had a grand total of 0 Democratic counties. 0. Out of 55 chances, not a single county went blue. Now, we could simply say these people are racist, homophobic bigots and obviously not deserving of consideration or rights because they must be stupid and probably say espresso instead of espresso. We could say that they don't even get their overpriced coffee from Starbucks like a real American anyway, probably because they're too busy wasting their stolen money at Dunkin' Donuts instead. We know what you're really dunking into, Mr. Donuts, and it's fascism. And it's un-American. As of January 20th of next year. So, we could write these people off, as we have, or we could take a closer look at what's fueling this alleged bigotry. And when you look closer, you notice some things. These West Virginian bigots are some of the most impoverished and disenfranchised Americans in the country. The people are being crippled by the opioid crisis and alcoholism. They have the lowest life expectancy and the highest rate of overdosing of any state in all of America. It has the worst population decline of any state in the last 10 years, and, if I'm being honest, period. I mean, look at this population graph. And I know what you're thinking. This is a population graph? What is going on here? This can't be a population graph. It looks like if I tried to draw Donald Trump. But unfortunately, it's both. Populations are supposed to do this, or this, or this. And those three states, they're the runner-ups for the worst population decline. Because of those little dips right at the end there. Compared to West Virginia, it's nothing. Of course, they have a problem with alcoholism and overdosing. Can you imagine what it must be like to have peaked in 1950? And how did this happen? Well, to mildly oversimplify at least the current crisis, coal. Not only does West Virginia produce the majority of our country's coal, but the economy has heavily depended on coal for over 100 years. 100 years. That's enough time for multiple generations of families to have their entire lives held together by coal. That's almost enough time for Keanu Reeves to finally win an Oscar. Almost. Now, all of a sudden, coal is a dying industry on its way out, and the jobs it provided and the revenue that used to come in and spill into other industries has reduced to just a small fraction of its former glory, with nothing but Walmart picking up the slack. The transition to renewable energy in West Virginia has not even remotely kept up with the decline of coal, and expecting them to put their faith in a party whose loudest supporters not only vilify them, but also idealize the complete destruction of what remains of their livelihood, is not just illogical, it's completely out of touch. Do you understand? To them, we are the rich celebrities singing Imagine. Oh God. Oh God, no. It's so stupid. Oh my God. Wait a minute. Does that make me Jimmy Fallon?
No.
What about Will Ferrell?
Absolutely not.
Gal Gadot?
You're getting colder.
I know. I'm Sarah Silverman. We're so out of touch that nowhere in mainstream liberal discourse do we present the idea that a decent person might be in a life circumstance where race relations and climate change are just not as big of a deal to them as their ability to make a living where they are. There are bigots, yes, but there are also a lot of people in that is hard to say. Rural red states. That is the hardest thing I've ever rural red states. Where's Scooby-Doo when you need him? Okay. There are bigots, yes, but there are also a lot of people in rural red states who care about injustice in the abstract, but in practice have to be more concerned with being completely forgotten about by the Democratic platform, because it assumes the right way to live is to spend your life preparing to move across the country to wherever the jobs are. But what about the people who don't want to uproot their lives? They have to make do with whatever jobs happen to be around them. They're not all bigots just because they aren't inspired by the Democratic message, because for rural Americans, the message we're sending them is that the world is moving forward and they will get left behind. But that's a sacrifice we're willing to make. Think about West Virginians. Think about their children. Because if the Democrats won't help their children, who will? Because I won't. I hate children. They pick on me and take my phone, they kick me and then run off while their parents just chuckle and say,
"Kids, what are you gonna do?"
You discipline them. That's what you do. You discipline your kids so they aren't a menace to society, John. A Democratic president will not help them. Maybe on a more local level, some Democratic representatives can help transition their economy away from a dying industry. But not only is gerrymandering making that nearly impossible, but touting your own moral superiority toward them because, unlike them, you care about disenfranchised peoples, doesn't really come across as genuine when you're using it as an excuse to not care about those disenfranchised people. Let's just be kinder. Let's care about the public more. Keep attacking misinformation, but stop attacking victims of misinformation. Don't stop protesting the government or standing up for civil rights. In fact, there should be more protests, not less. But maybe try to burn fewer bridges with people who aren't protesting with us. We're protesting authority, not our family and friends. Because I guarantee you, your smartphone was made by slaves, your clothes were made by child laborers, and eating meat is killing the planet. So get off your high horse. When we get rid of bipartisanship, our discourse becomes like the box where I keep all the love letters women have sent me over the years. In other words, it's empty. Look, Thanksgiving is coming up, and the best thing you can do is, of course, avoid politics. At all costs, avoid politics. But once that fails, listen to your family when they start to say crazy nonsense. I don't know why that happens, but for some reason, as soon as politics enters the equation, people just forget how to not sound insane. Just try. And don't interrupt, don't correct, don't even agree. Just listen. You'll change a lot more minds by making people feel like you care about their thoughts than you ever will by telling them they're stupid and to do their research. I promise you, they have done their research and they're bad at it. Why would more of it help? Even if you know they're wrong and you know exactly why, think back to all the times you've been wrong, because you should understand that once you have wholeheartedly bought into lies, whether from a toxic partner, a family member, or a friend group who reinforce these lies every day, it is damn near impossible to break out of it. Even if you're right, just telling someone that their partner sucks will not change their mind. In the same way, parroting to someone that 93% of Black Lives Matter protests are peaceful, so their whole "the left just wants to riot" narrative is stupid, will only push them away from you, because it will make you sound like a nerd, and no one wants to listen to a nerd. If I were to leave you with anything, it'd be this. Radically changing minds doesn't happen through the power of logic and reason. It only happens through the power of other people disagreeing, but still caring enough about you to gently reinforce more positive ideas over time. So don't fight, don't abandon, just listen. And if the conversation gets too frustrating and you have to get out, just pee yourself. Rural red states. There are also... Ooh, that's going to be a tough sentence. Okay.